welcome to episode 2 of the John Daigle Show, where we go wherever the wind takes us. And thank you, before we dive into everyone who joined in for episode 1, where we did basically nothing, right? Like, we made spicy peach margaritas, which I hope you got to enjoy with your friends and loved ones over the weekend. We read some of Cormac McCarthy's stanzas from my favorite books, and then also discussed some Chicago pizza, which I did find out over the weekend as I caught up to The Bear. Season 2, episode 7, by the way, I think is a episode that we are not worthy of as human beings, and is probably one of the best television episodes of any show of the past 5 years. I don't think it's something you can jump into, The Bear, like The Last of Us episode 3, which was Oscar worthy. You can jump into that and it tells its own story. I don't think season 2, episode 7 of The Bear, it tells its own story, but the character arc you work up to, and then the passion, education, and just enjoyment you get out of that episode, if you can get there, and it's 30-minute episodes, it's on Hulu. FX doesn't sponsor me, but maybe this show will air there one day. You should work up to that point. Before we jump in, though, and get to our next topics of episode 2, we, of course, have to make a drink together. And I want to start with an easy one, and one I made during a $125 best ball tournament entry in the FFPC. That replay, which is still available on this very channel if you go back a couple weeks. Just a solo, and I made this drink and got a couple responses on it, particularly from Mike Shop of Shop Talk. I believe it's Shop, not Shope. He can correct me if I'm wrong. But he said it was an intriguing drink because it is a dirty martini, except instead of a dirty martini, I like to put my own spin on it. Since, as we know, dirty just means the brine of a fruit, a vegetable, olives typically. We're going to put our own spin on it. So very quickly, 4 ingredients: vermouth, gin, 3 ingredients really, and then olive juice for a dirty martini. As always, I like to keep it simple because I'm not making my own cookbook. I'm not making my own mixology book. So tablespoons. And remember, when we talk in ounces, 1 ounce equals 2 tablespoons. I know you have this at home. Maybe it's even fancier than red plastic, but you probably don't have bar jiggers at home. So we're keeping it easy for everyone. So 2.5 ounces of gin. I just use regular $22 Beefeater gin. And I believe most bars, cocktail bars, if you go into and get Wells gin, they'll give you Beefeater. And I love Beefeater. Not just for the price, but genuinely it's a terrific dry gin. So 2.5 ounces. Obviously that means 5 tablespoons, which I'm going to do right now. And then just a ½ ounce of dry vermouth, whatever you want. Vermouth is like $7 to $10. I guess it gets a little more expensive, 15 to 20 if you want some proper Italian dry vermouth. I just have some cheap extra dry vermouth though. ½ ounce, 1 tablespoon. We need that splash too. And then honestly, for a classic martini, you don't even need the olive juice. You can stop there. One of my favorite combinations is like the original Prohibition martini, which is 2.5 ounces of gin and then sweet vermouth. Just 1 ounce of that, and that's it. That's what it is. And you're right, Joe. We are starting strong. I'm probably not going to drink this full one on the show. Last week, those margaritas, I took a nap after the show. I got a lot to do after this show. But ½ ounce of vermouth to go with our 2.5 ounces of gin. And then here's the kicker. We need ½ ounce of olive juice to make a dirty martini. We're just going to take the brine, right? These are just organic Greek olives. And like your partner, your wife, your husband, who goes to the store, the healthy one of you, maybe you're both healthy, and you go to the store and you purchase the organic vegetables and fruits for slightly more. I got to be honest, I don't know if it's going to make us live this thing longer. If we're going to see a few extra years under the sun just because we spend 50 more cents every time on organic vegetables and organic olives. But I do it anyways, he says as he makes a cocktail. But the point is we need ½ ounce. So what we're going to do, Francis, I agree with you. New Amsterdam gin, which is available at Costco. Don't sponsor me, but you can get the giant bottles that can feed an army. You are correct, Francis. We need half an ounce of olive juice. What we're going to do, though, is take half of that. So half of a tablespoon of olive juice, and then here's the kicker. Here's where Mike Shop of Shop Talk came in and said, now we're talking. Because there's something called a hot and dirty martini, which I'm never going to say out loud in a bar. I'm never going to walk in and order a hot and dirty drink. Maybe, is it an ego thing? Is it too much testosterone? Maybe I need to drop that. We're having therapy on the show now. Maybe I need to drop that and actually say that out loud to a bartender. But we're taking extra hot pickle juice. That's how we make hot and dirty. Because I do love, like barbecue sauce, that vinegar back. And I think adding the vinegar back to a martini is a very special thing. I think it tastes amazing. So I'm actually going to add half of that half ounce, so half a tablespoon of olive juice, and I'm doing another half a tablespoon of the spicy pickle juice. On the show, if you choose to go back and watch that stream I discussed on the 4for4 YouTube channel, I actually used pickled jalapeno brine, which is another way to do it. But again, the whole point is just to get that vinegar back. And then I think this is the most important part. This is the most important step. We don't shake. Because I think half the appeal of a martini is kind of that 007 vibe in which the sexiness comes from the sheen. It's got to be clean when you order a martini. So we stir. 15 to 20 seconds, just like you would shake a cocktail for 20 seconds. Otherwise, too much condensation. We stir. And then we strain to make sure it's extra clean. Now, because I'm an unprofessional host, I did not have a martini glass clean. I think I used the last one a couple days ago and it's still in the dishwasher. And I didn't find out till last second. But we're going to use a wine glass. Yes, cardinal sin, but we have to do it today. And I can use this as a teaching method to explain not a lot of places. Well, that's a lie. A lot of places have switched to the martini coupe. The martini glass, a stem with a bowl instead on top, an open bowl. Not only because the regular martini glass, it's old school. And think about it. Whenever you drug that glass to yourself in a bar, it spills so easily. It is the bartender's job, the mixologist's job, to give it to you at the very top, at the brim. And then you try to pick it up, and it's an absolute disaster. It usually spills on everyone. But the coupe keeps it in and still has the same incentive that the aromas are wide open at the top. Anyways, I'm sorry I'm talking. So we're going to strain it out. I'm just going to show you an example. You still get the aromas in the coupe, which is why a lot of bars have gone to the coupe. It's open, so it serves the same point and bringing all the ingredients together, and it has that fragrance under your nose whenever you drink it, which is kind of like this. But this is like, backdoor martini coupe. Anyways, this is a wine glass. Don't use it. That's a dirty martini. Hot pickle juice, olive juice, half an ounce, and 2.5 ounces of gin with a half ounce of vermouth. Cheers. God, that's such a good drink. Not for 10 a.m. Eastern, but man, that's an amazing drink. Okay. Now that that's done, let me talk to you because I appeared on Peter Overzet's randomizer stream just last Thursday. It was an absolute disaster. Year one last year, lots of physical components and prompts. Not sure why, but it entailed a lot of workouts from the chat, including the worm. This year, I showed up in a sleeveless shirt expecting the same. But the chat was just going to make me work out for some reason. That's not fair. Instead, it was an absolute mess and a myriad of prompts, which again, on his YouTube channel, Peter Overzet, he's probably streaming a best ball draft right now as we speak. You can find that replay from last Thursday. A lot of fun. But we were talking, and he mentioned, do you still enjoy wrestling? Because one of my prompts was to sing Cody Rhodes' song, which I then also got berated in Slack in my DMs because as a big wrestling fan, I did not remember Cody Rhodes' lyrics. I didn't know them. That's not fair. I didn't know them. I did that thing we all do in which we put on a song like your kids do in the back singing, and they kind of mumble. And then you get to the chorus, and then I can belch out the words because I know them. But I was explaining that, yes, I still absolutely love wrestling. Not that it's good all the time. In fact, I don't push it on anyone because it's not good most of the time. The entire point, though, and the sentence I used was, when it is good, it's the best thing on television. Nothing can beat it. No pop culture you mention. No Avengers, summer blockbuster. No extra Star Wars television series that they keep on adding on. Just seems like it goes on and on, just like wrestling. Nothing in pop culture beats wrestling when it's the best. And someone then, Nick, friend of the show, DM'd me and said, you should see this video. And I think this final minute 30, couple minutes, sums it up best. Let me know if you can't hear on the other end, but I believe
that's the thing about wrestling. It doesn't end. But that's the thing about life, too. And yeah, I left stuff out, but you don't remember everything. Humans crave melodrama. They crave fiction. When you're sitting alone and texting, it's because you're bored. Our imagination is our greatest gift and our greatest curse because we're bored all the time. And that's what fiction does for us. It gives us a sort of simulator for bigger stories and bigger emotions. That's what Lord of the Rings is. That's what Phantom of the Opera is. That's what Goodfellas is. That's everything. It's us watching and feeling, the human capacity for empathy through imagination. That's why we have stories. Triple H is a great character in fiction, told over 2 decades. A snob who had a chip on his shoulder that he could never let go and just wanted to be the best, but never could be that without cheating. Finally selling out to the point that if he can't be the champion, he'll choose the champion. And that's what you need, man. That's what we all want. From Long John Silver to Perseus to Neo to Walter White. We love watching people grow, change, struggle. Good people, bad people, we don't care. We want to see it, man. We need entertainment and we need it now. And when you watch wrestling, that's what you get. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of wrestling sucks. But when it's good, it's fucking great. Wrestling is melodrama. Wrestling is mythology. Wrestling is action. Wrestling is comic books. The only thing wrestling isn't is wrestling.
the only thing wrestling isn't is wrestling. That's how you sum it up right there. It's absolutely perfect. And I'm not someone, Rich Rebar of Sharp Football, very good friend, actually taught me this. You should not be someone who judges others based on what they enjoy. Do not be the person that puts that down. I talked about the bear earlier, and there were a couple of people I know on social media that mentioned, how can anyone like this? But you're right. I don't even want to do that anymore. Maybe it's called getting old as well. Not that I was ever judging anyone for what they liked anyways, but the fact that there is still that stigma out there about wrestling, when people love Game of Thrones, Last of Us, all the Marvels movies, all the superhero movies, and yet they can judge wrestling. That to me is still incredible when, again, it has some of the best storytelling possible. And one of those videos, I'm not going to show it today, but if you do just want to catch up for the hell of it, then I would say go to YouTube and look up Bloodline storyline, because I think that's the most important storyline to come from wrestling today. It's probably, I'm not going to lie, 20 minutes long, because it does go back over a calendar year. The story of Sami Zayn joining the Usos, Roman Reigns, Paul Heyman. It goes back that long. But the storytelling over that period of time and every match and every branch that has come from it was so beautiful that everyone should go watch it. And luckily, you don't have to watch all the wrestling just to catch up to it. That's it. No more wrestling for today. There was some discourse over the weekend, though, that I would like to address. And I always wanted to fall back to football in this show. I wanted it to be plan D. But I logged on, which is something you should never do. Never log on. And then I saw that it was apparently Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren weekend. And then I logged off, which is something you should always do. But the discourse was the incorrect context that Jaylen Warren affected Najee Harris. Let's start there. Because in best ball and redraft leagues, I will get this out of the way early so I don't get berated. I am drafting Jaylen Warren. Of course I am. I just don't think he's being properly touted by everyone as what he is. And that's Alexander Madison. He's a Jaylen Warren, a contingency backup who even over the second half of the season averaged 8 touches per game and did not affect Najee Harris whatsoever. I want to hold that thought, and we'll end with my thoughts on Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren towards the end. Because right now, while everyone's still hanging around, it's time to get to what has become my favorite part of the show. He is our own Ryan Noonan of BetSportsGolf.com here for the parlay of the day. And we are taking a different spin on it this time, Noonan, because with it being Tuesday and a slow period of the sports calendar, we have time to talk about golf on Tuesday, especially because there are 2 tournaments this week.
First of all, I'm excited to be here. I was told there'd be margaritas. The peaches are in season. What do we do today?
We did a hot and spicy or a hot and dirty martini. So hot pickle juice and olive juice with a heavy hand of gin. And it's our time, 9:15 in the morning. So a nap may have to happen after the show.
Yeah, you're a brave man. But you do have, I've seen these skills in action. You are, you're not your standard, home mixologist. You do have that creative gene and that creative thought process. You enjoy a nice cocktail. So this is a good little chance for you to display some of that stuff.
I do love hosting y'all. I love hosting friends. But also, I think it's a little bit of, honestly, showmanship on my part. It's the theater kid in me because I do love Broadway. Yeah. It's always fun, especially as someone who travels. It's always fun to show up with this accent and just show off the myriad of experiences. So the fact that someone who sounds like Sandy from SpongeBob is also out here making dirty martinis on a YouTube show, I think is a fun concept. At least that's me. It's Laughterbation. It's just for me.
But that's okay. That's important. It's good to do things that you like, content that you enjoy, and share some of the skills because you are not and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way to the average fantasy analysis out there, myself included, someone in the content space. You have, you're a very, very rich onion, Mr. Daigle. You have a lot of layers to peel back. So the folks, they get a little sample of that through your standard content, but this is a good place for you to go ahead and show that off.
My therapist is also saying I should get better at accepting compliments. So thank you. And you are here for the parlay of the day.
I love it. I mean, I know you had High Slop on last week. So
great
the bar has been very, very, it's raised very high. And I know he likes to get real wild with that. So along with all the other great stuff that we do here at 4 for 4, which I'm sure you've talked about. And again, anyone, if you are not aware, you can get a betting subscription. The 4 for 4 gets you access to all the things that we do. So you get all of Daigle's content. We get everything that we do. Connor, Alan, and myself and our team on the betting side. The top level betting sub gets you everything. There's a lot of cheap ways to do it. I'm sure you can find some of that in the show notes. Head over to 4 for 4, jump in our DMs. We're happy to help you with that. But we also have a golf product at BetSports as well. BetSports Golf, if you are not in the golf streets.
Company, man.
Yeah. Look, so I know this is a slow season for a lot of people. I I had a doctor's appointment yesterday. My doctor's like, "Oh, you're in sports media. Like, what do you do right now?" I'm like, well, this is the middle of golf season. We got, well, the Open Championship on deck next week. We got 2 tournaments this week. And look, golf betting is my favorite, I'll be honest, because not only we get it every week. It's kind of like the same cadence that we get with a Sunday NFL schedule, but there are so many different ways to bet it. And then, there were expanded menus in football betting, but like golf is a fantastic, fantastic sport to bet. We are, for the most part, the big dogs are in Scotland for the Scottish Open, getting ready for next week's Open Championship, which is in, Royal Liverpool. There's also a Altfield event, the Barbasol Championship, which is also, these are both co-sanctioned PGA, Euro, DP World Tour events. So you have pretty eclectic fields in comparison to what we typically see. Basically anyone that can play is qualified as in Scottish. The Barbasol having an alt title next to it is very apt when you look at what that field is. So we'll start with the Scottish. FanDuel allows us to do something that a lot of other books don't do. On DraftKings, you can parlay finishing positions, but you have to do it from different tiers, meaning like you could parlay a top 20 finish with the top 40 finish. FanDuel lets you parlay up to 15 legs within the same tier.
Mm-hmm.
So I love top 40s. I love to take my like top 5, top 10, top 20 action to our good friends over at BetMGM, who also allow you to get a betting subscription for very cheap because they offer dead heat rules, which I think is really important and unique to golf betting. Basically meaning like MGM pays ties in full. So if you have a guy that finishes T18 but is tied with 9 other guys, they would pay that out as a full top 20 price. Anywhere else is chopping that significantly and you lose money. So that's very interesting too. But I like the top 40s because that allows us to get a little bit more, even for the top tier guys, we get a little bit more room for them to, play poorly. Guys that I like to win, I like to protect them with some T40 action because, man, they're falling significantly short of winning 156-man fields, but I can still make some money on like some really flat type vig that we would love to get on the NFL football side. So I got a couple of them for you. I got a T20 for your audience, a T30 and a T40 parlay over at FanDuel. So we'll start at the top, Daigle. Scotty's in the fields. The only thing that's guaranteed to happen in a PGA Tour event this season is Scotty Scheffler finishes in the top 12. It's an insane Tiger-esque run that we're on right now. Even when he plays poorly, even when he loses 3-4 shots on the greens, Scotty Scheffler finishes inside the top 12. He will do so again this week. We're going to parlay him inside the top 20 with Victor Hovland, who is playing fantastic golf. I love him next week at the Open Championship. The chipping bug that was his problem for the last couple of years has really, really improved, and everything else is fantastic. Ball striking is elite, far and straight, which plays anywhere, will play here. You don't have to find fairways here, and we'll get to some of that here in a bit. But
as someone who Victor Hovland has stood out for DFS for me this week as a Scottish Open, do you think he'll be over rostered? That's what I'm trying to parse through. And of course, the DFS show is every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern on the Bets for Golf YouTube channel. I'll talk about it with Ron Kloss and Byron Lindeque then. But personally, do you think Victor Hovland is getting like some heat this week? Everyone's catching on.
I don't think so. I haven't looked much into DFS yet this week, but I would think based off of where he is, like he's kind of stuck there in the middle because we're in Europe. A lot of people will gravitate to Euros that are probably in that similar price tier just because of link style familiarity. Otherwise, you go further to the top where I think people will want to go up to Rory when we're overseas and Scotty, just because, as I talked about, the floor has been so high this year. So Victor could be in a little bit of a dead zone in terms of ownership. So yeah, I wouldn't think so. But again, Ron will have all that parsed through and folks can check out the DFS show. And what's important too is we're in Europe. I think we have like 4 a.m. tee times on Thursday morning. So this is, it's a little bit different this week. So make sure that folks are getting those lineups in sooner than later.
So we have that. And then we have, of course, a major next week. And then also we have the Women's World Cup beginning on the 20th. And we get a couple 2 a.m. games as well. So we got some good overnight action happening here.
I'm sorry, the women's what?
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Even though you support your country, you should at least watch World Cup soccer.
That's
especially because the women are so fucking dominant.
I like that. We'll take it. So,
anyways, though, that's a T20. What are the odds on that?
T20 plus 180.
Cool. Okay.
For
we got
Vic
a plus 180.
Yep. We're going to stay at again, FanDuel T30 here. So again, a little bit further down, prices are a little bit more advantageous. And this is a duo that I would expect to be chalky in DFS and are, I think, probably pretty popular in the betting space early. Matthew Fitzpatrick to T30, along with Tommy Fleetwood to T30. This is a plus 167 wager over on FanDuel. Again, just to finish in the top 30, they're going to be very popular. Fitz has pretty solid course history. Fleetwood's been playing really well, also very consistent too, and is also familiar with this track and this style. Again, like this place last year played very firm and fast. It's on the coast, and weather can be a problem too. You like to have some of these Euros, lower ball flights, familiarity when the times get a little bit tough. I think it's going to be wet, so it might not play firm and fast like that this year, but it looks like we might have more wind. So we don't have a lot of history here in terms of PGA Tour coming here. This has been mostly a Euro event. And again, we don't have shot link data here, which is tricky too.
Does the weather then negate distance? Since we know this being a links course, you should get a lot of rollout if weather were not the case.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a hybrid course. So it's interesting that they use this as a prep course for the Open Championship because it isn't your standard link style course. There is some tree-lined Parkland style, especially on the front. Again, you are going to run into some holes that are on the coast that are not protected. So yeah, I mean, distance doesn't matter. I'm not putting it in because again, you can build models on BetSports Golf in terms of like what matters statistically and have it spit out what you think is going to come out. I'm not putting driving distance in this week. I would put it, what you could do is you could put it in and give it no weight because I want to see where guys stack up against each other, but I don't want it to really impact because when you look last year at the leaderboard, and again, like Aaron Rye won here a couple years ago. It's a great example. We saw some other guys last year that fared fairly well where they're a little bit lower in terms of driving distance. So it's always an advantage, right? Just understanding the theoretical way the golf is played, like you have a higher lofted club, it's easier to hold the green coming in versus being a little bit further back, more of a shallow club, it's harder to hold the green. So it's always an advantage. It just becomes a matter of, is the rough penal if you happen to miss, even though you hit it down a little bit further. So it is really not here. And the guy that I'll get to in the next part,
it's not because I thought I read that it was 3 inches to 5 inches. And, like 4 inches is really when we start worrying and factoring in proximity to the hole from the rough.
Yeah. And also when you get so far down, if you are an actual bomber and they're playing firm and fast at that point, even if you are in the rough, if you're dealing with like some sort of, utility lob wedge, gap wedge type stuff, that's okay. These guys are so good. If they're going to be having, 80 yards in from the rough, that doesn't become real problematic. So obviously, you'd always rather be in the short stuff. But last year, Wyndham Clark, who for some reason is still massively disrespected in the betting space. I bet Wyndham Clark to win this golf tournament at 55 to 1. This guy has won 2 of his last 5 starts, both elevated events, is playing fantastic golf right now and is shorter on the odds board this week than Ludwig Aberg, who I think is going to be outstanding. Minwoo Lee, for some reason, who I know has played well here in the past, and that's something that I wouldn't weigh too heavily. Like, there's just no way that Wyndham Clark should be over 40 at this point because of how he's played this year. His transition has been fantastic. So he last year was T16 here. He hit 20 of 52 fairways on the week and finished inside the top 16 with a really nice final round because he can hit it a mile. This year, he's made massive strides on the approach game. He's a wizard on and around the greens. We saw that in spades in LA. Really, that saved him, his ability to, one putt everything, but his chipping was great too. That matters here a lot too. You're going to have a little bit of skills around the green too. So also Justin Rose has been playing great golf, 4 top 12s, I think, in his last 5 starts. Should have won last time out at the British Masters. Kind of kicked that away, finished T4. I love Rosie this week too. Rosie and Wyndham Clark, T40, plus 170 on FanDuel. Love those guys.
And I don't know what the best odds for Wyndham Clark are still, since you got it at such a juicy 55 to 1. But I believe we can still get a 40 to 1 on Bet Rivers if you have it, looking right now. And the other bet, if people still want to lay on it, do you think 35 to 1 at either DraftKings or PointsBet is still live?
Yeah, I think this guy should not be above 30 at this point of how he's playing. There's nothing that's statistically noisy about what we saw in LA or what we saw at Quail Hollow or what we saw leading up to Quail Hollow before he won. Like this is what he's doing is statistically sticky. He's made massive strides on approach. He's always been a guy that could bomb and putt, but now he's in a different tier in terms of what he can do from an approach standpoint. He's on the Ryder Cup team. He's locked in points wise. He's second behind Scotty. This guy should not be that far down the board. It's kind of like Max. It's reminiscent of Max last year, who made an ascension, started gaining and improving throughout the bag, and then continued to kind of get disrespected on odds boards based off of maybe his past history. So, yeah, I mean, and the mentality of like, hey, he's won twice in the last 5 times, he can't go out and win again. It's such flawed logic, and I think that's a massive driver here. Is we want form in golf. Unless you win, then you have too much form, and we can't back you because you just won. And that's absolutely insane to me.
So go ahead and read them out one more time. Just the bets, just the parlays, T20, T30, T40 for everyone at FanDuel.
FanDuel T20, Scotty Scheffler and Victor Hovland, plus 180. T30, Matthew Fitzpatrick and Tommy Fleetwood at plus 167. And then T40, Justin Rose, Wyndham Clark, and that is plus 170.
The great Ryan Noonan. Where else can they find the rest of this golf content if they're looking to bet on something, again, in the dry spell of the sports season, especially because I have also bet a couple long shots, NFL season-long props, but I'm also very adamant that unless you're betting big, like something that's worth that hold for the next 7 months of our lives, it's not worth it. Like whereas these golf outrights and golf parlays, that's a 4-day turnaround. So like, why aren't we just looking at the information and betting then? So where can people find the information?
BetSpertsGolf.com, monthly subs, $19.99. That's a fantastic deal. Gets you access to all the content that we're doing. And again, the tools that I referenced too, you can build out models. Get in the Discord. You know, I talk about this often where, I'm talking now, and even that's 24 hours ago. And we're pumping out these Wyndham Clark bets at 55, and now you're having to pay 35. It's still a good bet, but getting in the Discord, we're firing Ron Kloss and I, PJ Splits 101, very early on Monday morning when these odds first come out. We're up, we're waiting for the odds to drop, we're shopping lines. We already know who we're looking at before the odds come out. So those are things that we want to look at. So BetSpertsGolf.com, BetSperts YouTube channel. Actually got the betting show starting in about 30 minutes, 10 a.m. Central Time, if you want to get more stuff from me and from my buddy Andy Molitor from the Deep Dive.
And I'll be out of y'all's way before you start. Remember, at Ryan Noonan on Twitter for more golf info.
Thanks, buddy.
And because I horizontally teased it, let's get right back into finishing the show on Najee Harris and the context behind him and Jaylen Warren. The incorrect context I saw, because what happened was everyone is now citing, not everyone, that's not fair. How about everyone on Twitter? Because a lot of people kept their voices to themselves. The people I know understood the context, kept the voices to themselves. Najee Harris was already knowingly the worst first-round pick in all of fantasy football last year. We quite literally knew that going into the season. He handled 87% of Pittsburgh's backfield touches as a rookie. I think the Martini's catching up now. And 94, think about this, 94 of the team's 106 running back targets in his first year in 2021. That immense workload, though, only led to him being the RB8 in points per game. Imagine getting 87% of your team's touches and 94 targets and being just the RB8. And then people say that his explosive rate and his breakaway rate didn't change last year from the first half of the season, whenever he was dealing with that foot injury, to the back half. But again, that's already incorrect context because Najee Harris has never been explosive. In fact, Najee Harris is one of the least explosive players in the NFL. He's gotten by on size at 6'1", 230, and the fact that he can break tackles and dance. He's a very talented running back. But explosiveness and explosive rate and breakaway rate, which is also why I use those stats sparingly in my own analysis, because they usually don't matter. And in terms of not mattering, think about Najee Harris's explosiveness. He's recorded 1,217 carries since high school. So that 1,217 carries includes his career at Alabama and 2 years in the NFL. And only 30, 2.4%, 30 have gone for 20 yards. Najee Harris is a player that depends on volume to get there, not explosiveness. So I'm never going to cite explosive stats with Najee Harris. Also, knowing that profile, knowing he was already one of the worst first-round picks last year in fantasy football, because he wasn't explosive, we then also have to remember we were on top of it because 46% of his targets as a rookie came behind the line of scrimmage, not because that's where he's permanently going to earn targets, but because, like Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger just got rid of the ball quickly. Roethlisberger also had a very bad arm over his last 2 years in the league. But he was getting 40 pass attempts per game, and he was dumping the ball out quickly because he didn't want to stand in the pocket and get hit, and he also just couldn't throw downfield anymore. So we knew those two stats were going to be removed from Najee Harris, and it happened. So to then say it happened because of Jaylen Warren is a really odd thing. And the chart I have right now on the screen, because again, I'm the only person in America, in the world, that uses the Photos app, just screenshotted it from a doc. This obviously shows the touch shares between Harris and Warren in the halves of the season. Remember, Jaylen Warren was inactive. He was injured in week 12. So this is actually a fair 8-game split. 8 games, weeks 1 through 8. 8 games that both played together in weeks 10 through 18. And what we see is that Harris's carry share, percentage of the team's running back carries, actually went down. His target share went down, although look at the raw stats, it's meaningless. 3.5 to 3.1, whatever. Who cares? Jaylen Warren didn't affect anything. And his touches per game went up, which is also why, maybe if you learn anything from today's show, is that, has anyone said this? Probably so. I'm about to get yelled at. I'm about to get berated. But running back snaps have become one of the most useless stats in all fantasy football. You will rarely see me cite, if ever, running back snaps anymore. Just because touches, and this is one example in a grand scheme of every running back in the league, doesn't matter whatsoever. But over a period of time, when speaking in context and what matters, especially for player props, what's becoming more important now, snaps don't matter at all. I care about the rate of touches you're getting on those snaps, the percentage of backfield touches you handle. In this case, Najee Harris dipped a bit, 76% to 70% in the second half of the season. And what we see is that really, again, running back touches went up as a whole for the backfield, as a way to hide Kenny Pickett, who did instrument 5 consecutive fourth quarter comebacks, but was still a very questionable prospect, still a very questionable player too. But running back touches as a whole went up. Thus, both players received more running back touches. And yes, Harris's share did go down, but again, to still handle 21 per game, and more importantly, why his points per game increased, yes, because of touches, but because more touches led to more touchdowns. So that's how we're using this context. Jaylen Warren arguably had nothing to do with Najee Harris getting less of a workload. We knew what was coming because of what I described earlier and the analysis we put forth, that we're putting forth right now actually for the 2023 season, the analysis that was put forth this time last year, that we knew Najee Harris was a terrible first-round fantasy football pick. He's Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs is the worst first-round pick in fantasy football this season, unless you can take over last year's stats. If you're in a league where you can carry over last year's stats, by all means, please do it. Otherwise, allow your friends to do so in your league because they're making the absolute worst pick in fantasy football this year. So I am still drafting Jaylen Warren, who is Alexander Madison, someone that has no value whatsoever unless Harris gets hurt, but it's worth chasing that value since he arguably does become a top 12 running back if Harris gets hurt. And then in best ball right now, Harris is a hard pill to swallow, knowing that he's a player who provides value strictly on volume. And if you're going to reach for that volume in the third or fourth round usually where he's going right now, just wait for volume. That's the argument for Miles Sanders too. I do believe Miles Sanders is a 3-down workhorse. But I understand the devil's advocate side of it, because if you're arguing for 3-down workhorses, why don't you just arbitrage that approach for yourself and wait for James Conner? Wait for maybe even Rachaad White, who we'll get to another time. I'm behind consensus on Rachaad White, which I'm totally fine with, comfortable being on that island. We'll talk about that another time. But just wait. There's no need to then reach for these players in what is considered the dead zone by ADP. And that's the argument for and against Najee Harris and for and against Jaylen Warren. Also, before we get out of here, good luck. Please raise your hands and send your energy to friend of the show, Spike Week's own content manager and engineer, Rob Coakley, who is currently top 100 at the World Series of Poker, in the money on day 4 with only 650 entrants remaining. He's fighting in quite literally what was the most entrants for the World Series of Poker and 10 million to the top ever. So good luck to friend Rob Coakley, who will definitely be on this show next week when he takes home the 10 million. Until then, you know what to do. Tuesday, 10 a.m. Eastern. Bide your time by being a little bit kinder than what's required. We'll see you then.